The stars belonged to the Valthrine Empire, or so they believed. For 300 years, their fleets had swept across the galaxy like a storm that never ended. World after world fell before them. Species after species bent their knees and surrendered. The Valthrine kept careful records of their victories. 847 different civilizations now served the Empire. 847 flags hung in the Grand Hall of Conquest on their home world. Fleet Commander Jalveth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching another planet burn below. The Torellians had tried to resist. They lasted 6 days. It was almost sad how quickly they broke. The Valthrine graviton cannons turned their cities into dust, and their people into memories. Jalveth felt nothing as he watched. This was simply how the galaxy worked. The strong consumed the weak. The Valthrine were strong. Everyone else was weak. His second officer approached with a data tablet. "Commander, the rimward sectors are now fully pacified. 17 more systems have sworn loyalty to the Empire. Our casualties were minimal. 3 ships damaged, none destroyed." Jalveth nodded. "Excellent. Mark these conquests in the records. Which sector is next?" The officer consulted his tablet. "Long-range scouts have identified a new species. They call themselves humans. They occupy a small star system in the outer regions. 1 habitable planet, some colonies on nearby worlds, nothing significant. Initial scans show they have basic space travel but no major military presence. How many ships? Perhaps 200, scattered across their system. Small vessels, mostly. Nothing that matches our dreadnoughts." Jalveth smiled. "Another easy victory. Another flag for the Grand Hall. Prepare the 5th Armada. We will deal with these humans quickly and move on to more important conquests." Far across the black ocean of space, Captain Jiho guided his exploration ship through the Torellian system. The Dancing Horizon was a small vessel, built for long journeys and scientific research. Jiho and his crew of 15 had been mapping this sector for 3 months. They were supposed to meet the Torellians, establish first contact, and begin cultural exchanges. Earth was always eager to meet new friends among the stars. But when the Dancing Horizon emerged from its jump, Jiho saw only destruction. Torellian orbital stations hung in pieces. Their defense satellites were silent wreckage, and moving through the debris was a fleet unlike anything Jiho had ever seen. Massive ships, each one larger than anything humanity had built. Their hulls were dark metal that seemed to swallow light. Weapons bristled from every surface. "Get us out of here," Jiho said quietly to his pilot. "Silent running. Don't let them detect us." But it was too late. One of the alien ships turned toward them, its weapons powered up, glowing with an eerie purple light. Jiho had just enough time to hit the emergency transmission button before the Dancing Horizon exploded into atoms. The message traveled through the quantum communication network, jumping from relay to relay, until it reached Mars Station. Admiral Nari was reviewing supply reports when the emergency signal came through. She was a woman who had commanded fleets for 20 years, and she had learned to recognize danger when she saw it. The message from Captain Jiho was short, fragmentary, but clear enough. "Unknown hostile fleet. Massive force. Torellians destroyed. They saw us. There, then nothing. Static. Silence." Nari immediately called an emergency session of the Fleet Command. Officers gathered in the war room within minutes. The mood was tense. Earth had been at peace for 50 years. They had colonies across dozens of worlds, trade agreements with peaceful alien species. But now something had changed. "Show them the recording," Nari ordered. The holographic display lit up with images captured by the Dancing Horizon in its final moments. The alien fleet. The destroyed Torellian world. The massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed human vessels. Every officer in the room fell silent as they watched. "Computer, analyze the alien ship capabilities," Nari said. The AI responded in its calm voice. "Preliminary analysis suggests weapon systems significantly more advanced than current human technology. Energy output per ship exceeds our largest vessels by a factor of 10. Estimated fleet composition, 200 capital ships minimum. Threat assessment, extreme. One of the junior officers spoke up nervously. Admiral, what do we do? If they destroyed the Tyrellians in days, and the Tyrellians had better technology than us, we prepare. Nari cut him off. Her voice was steady, cold, certain. We prepare, like our lives depend on it. Because they do. The message from the Volthrene Empire arrived 3 days later. It came in every human language, broadcast to every human world, translated perfectly by computers that had studied human communications during their approach. People of Earth, you are hereby notified of your incorporation into the Volthrene Empire. You will surrender all military assets within 30 standard rotations. You will accept Volthrene governors on all your worlds. You will provide resources and labor as required by the Empire. Resistance will result in total annihilation. You have conquered no one. You are weak, you will obey. The message ended with coordinates for where Earth's leaders should send their formal surrender. Fleet Commander Zalveth expected a response within days, perhaps hours. Every species he had ever conquered followed the same pattern. First came shock, then desperate negotiations, then surrender. It was always the same. These humans would be no different. But the response that came from Earth was not what he expected. It was a single line of text, broadcast on all channels. Leave now, or discover why predators make poor prey. Zalveth read it 3 times. Then he laughed. It was the most ridiculous thing he had ever heard. These primitive creatures from their single wet world thought they were predators? They thought they could threaten the Volthrene Empire? He ordered the 5th Armada to advance immediately. 200 of the Empire's finest warships began the journey to the Sol system. Zalveth himself commanded from his flagship. He would enjoy watching these humans learn their place in the galaxy. He would enjoy adding their flag to the Grand Hall. But as the Volthrene fleet jumped toward Earth, Admiral Nari stood in the command center on Mars Station and smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret, who knew something the enemy did not. Earth was not like other worlds. Earth was classified as a Class 1, 2, Death World. A planet where everything had evolved to kill, where survival meant becoming stronger, faster, smarter, and more vicious than anything else. For millions of years, Earth had forged humanity in fire and blood and endless struggle. The Volthrene had conquered 847 civilizations. They had never met Deathworlders before. That was about to change. The Volthrene 5th Armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 200 warships arranged themselves in perfect formation. A display of power meant to terrify any who saw it. Fleet Commander Zalveth stood on his bridge, reviewing the tactical displays. The human homeworld was 8 light hours away. A small blue planet, orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Nothing special. Nothing worth remembering. Begin standard approach, Zalveth ordered. Weapons ready. Shields at maximum. Let these humans see what real power looks like. The fleet moved forward as one. Engines blazing bright against the darkness. Zalveth expected to see human ships rushing out to meet them. Desperate defenders trying to protect their home, but his sensors showed nothing. Just empty space and scattered asteroids. Perhaps the humans were even more primitive than he thought. Perhaps they had already given up. Then his sensor officer called out urgently. Commander, I'm detecting movement in the asteroid field. Multiple objects changing trajectory. Zalveth frowned. Natural phenomenon? No, sir. These are controlled movements. They're accelerating toward us. On the tactical display, dozens of asteroids suddenly came alive. Fusion drives ignited along their surfaces, pushing them into new vectors. Zalveth realized what he was seeing just a moment too late. These were not asteroids. They were weapons. Evasive maneuvers. All ships. The first kinetic kill vehicle struck a Volthrene cruiser at a significant fraction of light speed. The impact released more energy than a small star. The cruiser simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly. Then the second asteroid hit, then the third, then dozens more, slamming into the Volthrene formation like hammers from an angry god. In his command post buried deep inside Ceres, Commander Hyun watched the attack unfold with grim satisfaction. The asteroid defense network had been his project for 15 years. People called him paranoid for wanting to turn every rock in the belt into a potential weapon. They were not calling him paranoid anymore. Target priority ships first, Hyun ordered his team. Let's break their formation. The Volthrene fleet scattered, trying to avoid the incoming projectiles. Shields flared as smaller asteroids impacted. Some ships managed to destroy the weapons with their own cannons, but 40 ships were already gone, destroyed in the opening moments of the battle. Zalveth felt something he had not experienced in decades: fear. "Deploy graviton weapons," he shouted. "Tear those rocks apart." The Volthrene dreadnoughts opened fire with their most powerful weapons. Purple beams lanced out across space, striking the asteroids. The graviton cannons did their work. Rocks that had survived billions of years in space crumbled under artificial gravity fields. The remaining kill vehicles exploded or tumbled uselessly away. Zalveth breathed easier. The humans had surprised him, yes, but they had shown their hand. The Volthrene had adapted. Now the real attack would begin. He ordered the fleet forward again, toward Earth. That was when the moon opened up. Fleetmaster Suji sat in the Lunar Command Center, 3 kilometers beneath the surface. Around her, hundreds of officers monitored weapon systems that covered every square kilometer of the moon's surface. Railgun batteries built into the craters. Missile silos disguised as research stations. Mass drivers that could throw tungsten rods at hypervelocity. The moon had been fortified for 50 years, ever since humanity first started asking, "What if someone hostile comes?" "They're in range," her tactical officer reported. "Fire everything," Suji said calmly. The moon's surface rippled like water as thousands of concealed hatches opened simultaneously. Railguns emerged from hidden bunkers. The electromagnetic acceleration gave almost no warning before the projectiles launched. By the time the Volthrene sensors detected the attack, the rounds were already halfway to their targets. A Volthrene battleship took 17 railgun rounds through its forward section. Its armor held for the first 3 impacts. The 4th punched through. By the time the 17th hit, the ship was a gutted wreck. Across the formation, Volthrene vessels reeled under the sudden barrage. Shields collapsed. Armor failed. Ships that had conquered hundreds of worlds died in the black between Earth and its moon. Zalveth could not believe what he was seeing. His fleet was being destroyed, not defeated, destroyed. These humans fought like nothing he had encountered. They used weapons that should be impossible. They fortified empty moons. They turned rocks into missiles. What kind of species did such things? "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Emergency jump. Get us out of here." The surviving Volthrene ships turned and fled. Hyperspace engines spun up as fast as their systems allowed. 80 ships had been lost. Nearly half his fleet. Gone. The 5th Armada jumped away from Sol system in complete disorder, leaving behind wreckage and shocked silence. On Mars Station, Admiral Nari watched the enemy retreat. She felt no joy, only calculation. This was the first battle. The enemy would return, and they would return in greater numbers. "Get me casualty reports," she ordered, "and damage assessment for all defense platforms." The reports came in quickly. 12 asteroids destroyed, 43 railgun batteries damaged or destroyed, 16 human fighters lost with all crew. The defense network had held, but it had been hurt. And Nari knew the Volthrene would not make the same mistakes twice. She opened the emergency command channel that linked all human worlds. Her face appeared on screens across 50 star systems. "This is Admiral Nari. As of this moment, we are at war. The enemy has retreated, but they will return. I am activating the Total Defense Protocol. All military forces are hereby mobilized. All shipyards are to begin emergency production. All civilians are to report to designated shelters." She paused, letting her next words carry their full weight. "Humanity has survived ice ages. We have survived plagues. We have survived every disaster our world could throw at us. We will survive this. But only if we stand together. Only if we fight with everything we have. This is not a war for territory. This is a war for existence, and we will not lose. Across human space, the message was received. On colony worlds, militia units formed up. In orbital shipyards, workers began double shifts. On Earth itself, every nation united under a single purpose: survival. Meanwhile, Fleet Commander Zalveth sent his report back to the Valthrine homeworld. His message was long and detailed, describing the unexpected resistance, the unconventional weapons, the shocking losses. He ended with a warning that he would never have thought to give before. These humans are not like other species. They fight with creativity and viciousness. They booby-trap their own system. They turn peaceful rocks into weapons. I request reinforcements, significant reinforcements. This will not be an easy conquest. Quote, the response came from the Imperial throne itself. Your failure is noted. The Grand Armada will be dispatched. 2,400 ships. The full might of the Empire. These humans will be crushed. They will serve as an example to all who dare resist. Do not fail again, Commander. Zalveth read the message and felt cold dread. The Grand Armada. The largest fleet ever assembled. Surely that would be enough. These humans had tricks. Yes, but tricks could only go so far against overwhelming force. What Zalveth did not know, could not know, was that humans had been preparing for this moment since they first looked up at the stars and asked themselves a simple question. What if something out there wants to hurt us? And then they had spent centuries answering that question with weapons, fortifications, and strategies that would horrify any civilized species. Because humanity was not civilized by Valthrine standards, they were survivors, they were predators, they were the children of a world that spent 4 billion years teaching one simple lesson: adapt or die. The Valthrine were about to learn that lesson themselves. News of the first battle spread through human space faster than light itself. On colony worlds at the edge of human expansion, people gathered around displays to watch the recordings. The Valthrine retreat. The enemy burning. Hope mixed with fear in equal measure. They had won the first fight, but everyone knew the war was just beginning. Earth was not alone in the cosmos. 47 colony worlds orbited distant stars. Mining stations clung to asteroids in a dozen systems. Habitats floated in the dark between worlds. Millions of humans had spread across 80 light-years of space. They remembered why they left Earth. To survive. To grow. To ensure that no single disaster could end humanity. Now that decision would be tested. Admiral Nari stood before the War Council in the command center deep beneath Mars. Around the table sat the commanders of humanity's military, the directors of its industries, and the representatives of its colonies. Every face showed the same expression, determination mixed with the understanding of what was coming. Intelligence estimates the Valthrine will return with at least 2,000 ships, Nari said without preamble. They will not underestimate us again. Our defense network hurt them, but it will not be enough against those numbers. We need to change our strategy. We need to fight in ways they cannot predict. Battlemaster Taeyang spoke up. He was a career soldier who had spent 30 years studying military history, both human and alien. His specialty was unconventional warfare. The Valthrine fight like every successful empire fights. Overwhelming force, superior technology, standard tactics that have worked for centuries. They expect us to meet them head-on. We should do the opposite. Explain, Nari said. Taeyang activated the holographic display. Images of Earth appeared. Jungles, oceans, deserts, mountains. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. Predators, diseases, weather, starvation. Our ancestors survived by being smarter, meaner, and more creative than anything else. They used tools, they set traps, they hunted things bigger than themselves by working together. That is what we need to do now. Medical Officer Yunji leaned forward. She was young but brilliant, specializing in xenobiology. I have been studying the Valthrine physiology from the wreckage we recovered. They evolved on a low-gravity world, with minimal microbial life. Their immune systems are weak by our standards. We could weaponize Earth diseases. Not to kill them necessarily, but to disable their crews, make their ships useless without firing a shot. Several council members looked uncomfortable. Biological warfare had been banned on Earth for centuries, but Nari raised her hand. We are fighting for our existence. We will use every tool available. Continue. Onji nodded. I can have modified agents ready within 2 weeks. They will spread through their ventilation systems. The Valthrine will spend days sick before they even know what hit them. It is not honorable, but it is effective. Honor is for species that can afford it, Taeyang said bluntly. We cannot. Chief Engineer Kiwan stood up. He was an older man with scars on his hands from decades of working with machines. I have something to show you, all of you. Follow me. The council members exchanged glances but followed Kiwan out of the war room. They took a transport ship that flew them out past Mars, into the rings of Saturn. The journey took hours. No one spoke. They all wondered what could be so important that Kiwan would drag them this far. Then they saw it. Hidden among billions of ice particles and rocks, concealed by careful camouflage and sensor baffles, was a shipyard. And floating in the construction bays were ships unlike any in the human fleet. Massive vessels, each one 3 kilometers long, brutal-looking things with armor plating as thick as buildings. Weapons bristled from every surface. What are those? Breathed one of the colony representatives. Ragnarok-class dreadnoughts, Kiwan said with obvious pride. We have been building them in secret for 20 years, ever since we met the first hostile species and realized we might need them someday. That day has come. Nari stared at the ships. How many? 30. With crews ready to deploy. They do not have the fancy shields the Valthrine use. They do not need them. Their armor is 15 meters of layered alloy and composite materials. They have backup systems for their backup systems. They were designed based on one principle. Survive everything the enemy can throw at you, then hit back harder. Can they stand against Valthrine dreadnoughts? Kiwan smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Their graviton weapons will hurt us. But they have to hit us many times to break through. We only need to hit them once. Our main guns fire relativistic kill rounds. Tungsten slugs accelerated to 98% light speed. When those hit, there is no shield that can stop them. There is only plasma. The council stared at the dreadnoughts in silence. These were not exploration vessels. These were not peaceful research ships. These were weapons. Pure and simple. Built for one purpose. War. How soon can they deploy? Nari asked. They are ready now. Just waiting for your order. Admiral. Nari turned to face the council. The Valthrine want to conquer us like they conquered 800 other species. They think we will surrender or die. They are wrong. We are going to show them what happens when you threaten Deathworlders. When you attack creatures that evolved to survive anything, we are going to hurt them so badly that they will never forget the name Earth. She looked each person in the eye. I need authorization to deploy every weapon we have. Every strategy. Every tactic. No matter how brutal. No matter how terrible. Because if we lose this war, there is no second chance. There is only extinction. Do I have that authorization? The vote was unanimous. Across human space, the preparations intensified. Shipyards worked around the clock. Every civilian with engineering knowledge was drafted into war production. Colony militias trained with weapons they hoped they would never need to use. Children were evacuated to deep shelters. Everyone knew what was coming. On Earth itself, the nations that had sometimes squabbled over borders and resources now worked as one. Every military force answered to Admiral Nari. Every factory produced war materials. Every scientist worked on some aspect of the defense. Humanity had survived by cooperating in the face of danger. That instinct ran deep. In orbit around Jupiter, strike leader Wu Jin prepared his squadron for deployment. He commanded 200 stealth fighters, each one designed to be nearly invisible to sensors. His crews were volunteers, people who understood that what they were about to do would likely kill them. But they did it anyway, because that was what humans did. They sacrificed for the greater good. Remember, Wu Jin told his pilots over the comm, We do not fight fair. We do not give the enemy a chance. We hit them when they are not looking, from angles they do not expect, with weapons they do not know we have. We make them afraid. We make them doubt. And if we die, we make sure we take as many of them with us as possible. The pilots acknowledged. No one cheered. No one made jokes. They understood the reality. But they were ready. 2 weeks later, long-range sensors detected the Valthrine Grand Armada approaching. 2,400 ships, arrayed in formations that blocked out the stars, the largest fleet ever assembled. Moving towards Seoul with the confidence of an empire that had never known defeat, Admiral Nari stood in the command center, watching the display. Around her, hundreds of officers worked at their stations. The defense network was ready. The dreadnoughts were deployed. The stealth squadrons were in position. Every trap was set. Every weapon was loaded. She thought about Captain Jiho, who had died trying to warn them. She thought about all the species the Valthrine had conquered. She thought about Earth, spinning peacefully below, unaware that its fate was being decided in the black between the planets. Then she opened the fleet-wide channel. Her voice carried to every ship, every station, every human soldier preparing to fight. This is Admiral Nari. The enemy is here. They come with numbers meant to crush us. They come with weapons meant to destroy us. They come believing we will break like all the others, but we are not like the others. We are humans. We are the children of Earth. And Earth taught us that survival is not given, it is earned. Today we earn our survival. Today we show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do. All ships, battle stations, let us begin. The Valthrine Grand Armada entered the Sol system, expecting an easy victory. They were about to have the worst day in their empire's history. The Valthrine Grand Armada moved through space like a tidal wave of metal and death. 2,400 warships in perfect formation. Fleet Commander Zalveth had learned from his previous failure. This time there would be no surprises. Scouts swept ahead of the main fleet, checking for hidden asteroids or traps. Screens of smaller ships protected the dreadnoughts. Every sensor was active, searching for threats. The human defense line waited at the edge of the asteroid belt. Zalveth could see them on his displays. Perhaps 300 ships. Pathetic compared to his armada. Even with their tricks, even with their booby traps, they could not stand against these numbers. It was simple mathematics. The humans would die, and the Valthrine would add another flag to their collection. Advance, Zalveth ordered. All weapons ready. Destroy anything that moves. The armada surged forward. Then the first trap activated. What the Valthrine had thought were empty portions of space suddenly blazed with radiation. Gravity mines that had been waiting in perfect silence detonated in cascading waves. The explosions created artificial gravity wells that tore at the Valthrine formation. Ships collided with each other as their navigation failed. Shields flared and died under the assault. Evasive action, Zalveth shouted, but it was too late. 50 ships were destroyed or crippled in the opening seconds. The formation fell into chaos as ships tried to avoid the mines while still maintaining their attack vectors. That was when strike leader Wujin attacked. His stealth squadron had been waiting in the cosmic background radiation for 3 days. Silent running. No active sensors. Just patient hunters, waiting for prey. Now they struck from 6 impossible angles, materializing out of nothing like ghosts with guns. Wujin's fighter screamed toward a Valthrine cruiser at speeds that would kill an unprotected human. But his pilot suit managed the G-forces. Barely. He fired missiles at point-blank range, watching them tear into the cruiser's engines. The ship exploded behind him as he vectored toward his next target. Around him, his squadron did the same. They moved like predators, like sharks in dark water, appearing just long enough to kill before vanishing again. The Valthrine tried to target them, but the stealth fighters were too fast, too small, too unpredictable. Human pilots flew in ways that should be impossible. They pulled maneuvers that would disable Valthrine navigation systems. They treated space combat like a knife fight in the dark. And they were winning. But numbers tell. The Valthrine adapted. deploying spread-fire weapons that filled entire sections of space with energy. Wu Jin watched as ships in his squadron died, their stealth systems overwhelmed. He lost half his people in the first 5 minutes, but they had bought time. They had created chaos. And that was what Admiral Nari needed. All dreadnoughts, advance, Nari ordered from her flagship. From behind the human defense line, 30 massive shapes began to move. The Ragnarok-class dreadnoughts accelerated toward the Valthrine formation. They did not dodge. They did not weave. They simply advanced in a straight line, weapons charging, armor gleaming in the starlight. Zalveth saw them coming and laughed. Focus all graviton weapons on those ships, turn them into scrap. 100 Valthrine vessels opened fire. Purple beams of twisted gravity lanced across space, striking the dreadnoughts. The energy was enough to liquefy organic tissue, to tear apart normal ships, but the Ragnarok class had been built to take this kind of punishment. Their armor held. Barely. Sections melted. Outer layers vaporized. But the dreadnoughts kept coming. Captain Hana commanded the lead ship, Soul's Fury. She felt every hit through the hull, heard every damage report, watched crew members die as sections of her ship were breached. But she did not stop, could not stop. This was what her ship was built for. To survive the unsurvivable and deliver death in return. Main guns ready, her weapons officer reported. Fire, Hana said calmly. The Soul's Fury shuddered as its primary weapon discharged. A tungsten rod 20 meters long, accelerated to 98% the speed of light. When it hit the Valthrine dreadnought, the impact released more energy than most weapons could manage. The alien ship's shields collapsed instantly. Its armor failed. The rod punched through the entire vessel from bow to stern, turning everything in its path into superheated plasma. The dreadnought broke apart, spilling atmosphere and crew into the void. All 30 human dreadnoughts fired at once. 30 Valthrine capital ships died in the span of 3 seconds. The alien formation reeled. This was not how battles were supposed to go. The humans were supposed to break. They were supposed to flee. Instead, they advanced like armored monsters, soaking up damage that should have destroyed them, and hitting back with weapons that ignored all defenses. All ships, concentrate fire on the human dreadnoughts, Zalveth commanded. Destroy them. The Valthrine fleet obeyed, focusing their weapons. 3 human dreadnoughts exploded under the combined assault. 4 more were crippled and fell behind. But the rest kept coming, and behind them, the human fleet followed, using the dreadnoughts as mobile fortresses. Hana watched her armor integrity dropping. 90%, 70%, 50%. Her ship was dying around her. But they had reached weapon range for the smaller ships. She opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, launch boarding pods. The Valthrine had no idea what was coming. They saw small pods launching from the human ships. Too small to be missiles. Too slow to be threats. Then the pods attached to Valthrine hulls and began cutting through. Human marines poured into the alien vessels. They wore powered armor that made them stronger than they had any right to be. They carried weapons that were designed for one purpose: to kill in close quarters. And they moved through the Valthrine ships like a plague. The Valthrine crew panicked. They were not trained for boarding actions. They were not prepared to fight humans face to face. And humans up close were terrifying. Stronger than expected, faster than they should be, capable of functioning in high-G environments that would crush Valthrine soldiers. One human marine could clear an entire deck in minutes, leaving only corpses and silence behind. Panic spread through the Valthrine fleet like a virus. Ships that had been fighting effectively suddenly went silent as their crews were overwhelmed. Others broke formation, trying to escape the boarding pods. The perfect military machine began to fall apart. Admiral Nari saw her moment. All ships, full assault, break their center. The human fleet surged forward. Every ship that could still fly, every weapon that could still fire, every pilot who could still fight, threw themselves at the Valthrine center. It was chaos. It was brutal. It was exactly the kind of fight humans excelled at. Because humans had learned to fight on a world where hesitation meant death. where mercy was a luxury, and where survival required absolute commitment. The Valthrine Center collapsed. Their formation, so perfect at the start of the battle, was now a scattered mess of damaged ships and panicked crews. Zalaveth watched in horror as his armada fell apart around him. How had this happened? How had these primitives defeated the greatest fleet ever assembled? All ships retreat, he ordered. Emergency jump. Get us out of here. But the humans were not done. They pursued the fleeing Valthrine ships, killing as many as they could before the aliens could escape into hyperspace. When the last Valthrine vessel jumped away, the Sol system fell silent. The cost had been terrible. 700 human ships destroyed. 15,000 crew members dead. The dreadnought fleet was reduced to 18 operational vessels. The defense network was in ruins, but they had won. Against impossible odds, against overwhelming numbers, humanity had won. Captain Hana sat in what remained of her bridge. Half her crew was gone. Her beautiful ship was a wreck, but they had survived. She looked at the displays showing the debris field, the scattered human forces, and the empty space where the Valthrine fleet had been. "This is Sol's fury to Fleet Command," she said quietly. "We are operational, requesting orders." Admiral Nari's voice came back, tired but steady. "Well done, Captain. All ships, begin search and rescue operations. Collect our dead, repair what can be repaired, and prepare for the next phase." "What phase is that, Admiral?" "We showed them we can defend. Now we show them we can attack." Across the Valthrine Empire, the survivors of the Grand Armada jumped into friendly space, bringing news that would shake the foundation of their civilization. The humans had not just won. They had destroyed nearly half the Armada. They fought like nothing anyone had ever seen. They used weapons that should not work, tactics that made no sense, and they refused to break no matter what was thrown at them. For the first time in 300 years, the Valthrine Empire knew fear. Fear of a small species from a single world. Fear of creatures that evolution had forged into perfect survivors. Fear of Deathworlders, who would rather die than surrender. And in the Sol system, humanity began to prepare for what came next. Not defense, not survival, but vengeance. The Valthrine Empire had never retreated before. For 300 years, their fleets had only moved forward, conquering, claiming, expanding, but now their ships fled through hyperspace, running from a species they had thought was weak. Fleet Commander Zalveth sat in his ruined flagship, staring at casualty reports that seemed impossible. Over 1,000 ships lost. Tens of thousands of crew dead. The Grand Armada, the pride of the Empire, had been shattered. He sent his report to the Imperial throne. Every word felt like a confession of failure. But he included everything. The human tactics, their weapons, their absolute refusal to surrender even when facing certain death. He ended with words he never thought he would write. "These humans are not like the other species. They fight with creativity born from surviving on a hostile world. They accept casualties that would break any civilized military. They use weapons we cannot defend against. I do not believe we can conquer them. Not without losing our entire fleet, perhaps not even then." The response from the Imperial throne took 3 days to arrive. It was a single line. "The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. However, the Empire also does not waste resources on futile conquests. Withdraw all forces from human space. Monitor, but do not engage. The matter is under review." Zalveth read the message 3 times. It was the closest the Empire had ever come to admitting defeat. And he knew what it meant. The humans had done something 847 other species could not do. They had made the Valthrine back down, but Admiral Nari was not satisfied with defense. She stood in the war room, looking at star charts that showed Valthrine territory. Hundreds of systems. Thousands of worlds, all of them held by an empire that had threatened humanity's existence. She thought about Captain Jiho. About the 15,000 crew members who died defending Sol. About every species that had been conquered and enslaved. "We are not stopping," she announced to her staff. "We are not just going to sit here and hope they leave us alone. We are going to make sure they never threaten anyone again." The officers exchanged glances. Attack? Attack the Valthrine Empire on their own territory? It seemed insane. But they had learned that Admiral Nari's instincts were usually correct. "What are you proposing?" Chief Engineer Kiwan asked. "We liberate every world the Valthrine conquered. We show 847 species that the Empire can be defeated. We destroy their supply lines, their shipyards, their ability to make war, and we make an example of them, so that no one ever thinks about threatening Earth again." It took 6 months to rebuild the fleet. Human shipyards worked without stopping, producing new vessels based on lessons learned in the battle. The new ships were smaller than dreadnoughts but faster and more heavily armed. They were built for raiding, for hit-and-run attacks, for guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. The first raid hit a Valthrine supply depot in the Outer Rim. Captain Hana, now commanding a rebuilt Soul's Fury, led the attack. Her task force jumped in, destroyed the depot, freed 300 enslaved aliens, and jumped out before the Valthrine could respond. It took 12 minutes from start to finish. The second raid targeted a Valthrine shipyard. The third hit a fuel refinery. The fourth destroyed a communications relay. Human forces struck across Valthrine space like ghosts, appearing without warning, doing terrible damage, and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. But the raids did more than destroy infrastructure. They freed enslaved populations. Engineer teams led by Kiwan worked to help liberated species rebuild their technology, their economies, their hope. Medical teams under Officer Yunji distributed vaccines and medical aid, using human biological knowledge to help species that had been neglected by their Valthrine overlords. Humanity was not conquering. They were liberating. And word spread across the galaxy. The Terrellians, who had been conquered so easily, rose up against their Valthrine governors. With human weapons and training, they drove the occupiers from their worlds. The Kireshi people, enslaved for 2 centuries, declared independence and fought alongside human forces. One by one, species that had bent under the Valthrine boot stood up again. The Empire's territory began to fracture. Worlds that had been secure for generations suddenly became war zones. Supply lines that had been reliable for centuries were cut. Ships that had been invincible were destroyed by human weapons in the hands of freed slaves. The Valthrine military found itself fighting on 1,000 fronts, against an enemy that refused to face them in open battle. 6 months after the Battle of Seoul, the Valthrine Imperial Council met in emergency session. The reports were catastrophic. 300 systems in open rebellion. Military resources stretched beyond capacity. Economic collapse, threatening the core worlds. And behind every problem, every disaster, every failure, were humans. The High Commander stood before the Council. "We must sue for peace. The humans are destroying us slowly. We can still fight, but every day we grow weaker, while they grow stronger. We must negotiate." There was silence. The idea of the Valthrine Empire negotiating with anyone was unthinkable. But the alternative was watching their civilization slowly die. Contact the human leadership, the Council decided. Offer terms. Admiral Nari received the Valthrine message on Mars Station. She read their proposed terms and laughed. They were offering to recognize human sovereignty, to establish neutral zones, to agree to non-aggression. As if that was enough, as if humanity would forget what they had tried to do. "No," Nari said simply. "These are our terms." She sent a message directly to the Valthrine Imperial Throne. Complete withdrawal from all occupied territories. Reparations to every conquered species. Dismantling of the graviton weapon systems. Reduction of the military to defensive forces only. And war crimes trials for commanders who had committed atrocities during their conquests. The terms were harsh, humiliating, the kind of terms imposed on defeated enemies. But the Valthrine had no choice. Their empire was collapsing. Their military was exhausted, and the humans showed no signs of stopping. 2 weeks later, representatives from the Valthrine Empire arrived at a neutral space station to sign the treaty. Admiral Nari attended personally. She wanted to look into their eyes as they signed away 3 centuries of conquest. The Volthrene delegates were visibly uncomfortable. They had never been on the receiving end of such terms. They had never been defeated. But they signed. Every page. Every clause. Everything that humanity demanded. When it was done, Nari stood to address them. The room fell silent. "You conquered 847 civilizations," she said, her voice cold and clear. "You thought numbers and technology made you invincible. You thought every species would break before you. You were wrong." She leaned forward, her eyes locked on the Volthrene delegates. "Do you know what a death world is? It is a planet so hostile that simply surviving makes a species stronger. Earth is a class 1-2 death world. For 4 billion years, it tried to kill every living thing on it. Ice ages, volcanoes, predators, diseases, starvation. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And humans survived it all. We adapted. We evolved. We became apex predators in a world full of things trying to eat us." She straightened up. "You tried to conquer us like you conquered civilized species. Species that evolved on comfortable worlds. Species that never had to fight for survival every single day. But we are not civilized by your standards. We are survivors. We are warriors. We are the children of a planet that taught us one simple lesson: adapt or die." The Volthrene delegates said nothing. What could they say? "You will leave every world you conquered," Nari continued. "You will help rebuild what you destroyed. And you will remember what happened here. Remember that humanity exists. Remember what we can do. Because if you ever threaten us again, if you ever threaten any species under our protection, we will not just defeat you. We will end you. Your empire will become a story. Parents tell their children about what happens to bullies." She turned to leave, then paused. "There are billions of humans now, scattered across hundreds of worlds. We have long memories. We never forget who tried to hurt us. And we never stop preparing for the next threat. That is what Deathworlders do. We survive. Always." Admiral Nari left the chamber. Behind her, the Volthrene delegates sat in stunned silence, truly understanding for the first time what they had faced. Not just another species, but creatures forged in the cruelest crucible nature could create. Beings who saw every challenge as a test to overcome, every enemy as a problem to solve, every obstacle as temporary. The treaty was ratified by all parties. The Volthrene Empire began its long withdrawal, its forces returning to their core systems. Across the galaxy, freed species rebuilt their civilizations, and they did so under the watchful protection of human fleets. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The defenses remained active. The shipyards continued building. Because humanity had learned another lesson from this war. Peace was good, but preparedness was better. They would never again be caught unprepared. They would never again let someone else dictate whether they lived or died. Captain Hana stood on the observation deck of Sol's Fury, watching Earth spin below. Blue and green and beautiful. A world that had tried to kill humanity for millions of years and instead created the most stubborn survivors in the galaxy. She thought about all the people who had died defending it. About all the people who would never have to die because of what they had accomplished. The age of easy conquest was over. The Volthrene had learned that lesson at terrible cost. Other species watched and took note. Humanity was not to be threatened. Not to be attacked. Not to be underestimated. Because humans were Deathworlders. And Deathworlders did not break. They did not surrender. They did not give up. They survived. They adapted. They won, and the galaxy would never forget it.